focusing on so the first book reads Children's Books in Children's Hands, a brief introduction to their literature. So this was one of the many books that I had pertaining to children's literature. And children's literature is specifically important because literature is a main resource for students to develop their linguistic skills. So I wanted to take a look into this book and visit and review the various kinds of topics. Children's books and children's hands. Excuse my wrist, she was tired. Here's the brief contents that I wanted to go over. And while I briefly skim this, I noticed an important trend that I appreciated about this book. These contents go in order of simplest subject matter to more complex subject matter. So if I were to look at chapter 1, which is children's book in children's hand, the title page, then go to chapter 2 that says literary elements in works for children, and then chapter 3 picture books, and then chapter 4 literature representing diverse perspectives, and then chapter 5 international literature, and then chapter 6 poetry for children, and then chapter 7 traditional literature, chapter 8 modern fantasy and science fiction, number 9 contemporary realistic fiction. That sounds more complex. Chapter 10 historical fiction, and chapter 11 nonfiction. So what I've taken by reflecting on the order that this book is written is that it goes from very more simple topics such as picture books to more advanced topics such as traditional literature, contemporary realistic fiction. That is a mouthful. Historical fiction and nonfiction. I think it's appropriate to put nonfiction as the last part of this book because the most complex topics have to do with nonfiction. So skimming through, I want to take a look at various pages. Wow, so children's books in childhood, the Middle Ages, my gosh, 500 years ago, 1476, so this book is not afraid to delve into the past. Puritan times, oh my goodness, I didn't know children knew how to read back then. Has very good visuals. Here's chapter 2, literary elements in the works. It has all the subsections that's covered. I loved this book, Rules. For those of you who don't know, and it's funny they bring it up. Rules is about a teenage girl who has a brother who is autistic and non-verbal. Non-verbal, ladies and gentlemen, does not yap at all. So she basically joins him in his speech therapy or kind of disability and condition, and she gets to know him very well through these appointments. And it's, yeah, a young girl learns a way to cope with her brother's autism to expand her own capacity to relate to people who are different. I remember I read this in 4th grade. I loved it so much. It was very touching how the author was able to express intimate and personal emotions of struggle and overcoming various struggles, especially having to do with autism. It gave me insights into the other people's lives who may be dealing with these kind of conditions. And it was funny because in 4th grade I was part of a school recycling program, and we would go into classrooms that we were assigned to, and I was assigned to the SPED classroom. And so while I was reading this book, I was able to take note of the various disabilities and conditions that people in the SPED room have or had during that time. So this book was really perfect timing, and it still sticks with me to this day. But yes, there's plots, conflicts, implied reader. My favorites. I love picture books. Sometimes words get overwhelming and I just want to stare. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. The vase in the depths. Oh my goodness. Lindbergh. How fascinating. Many adults. So we have categories of picture books. Just various topics. It's very text dense and text heavy. So as you can tell, there's a lot of reading, but I really love looking at the visuals, such as Wings by Christopher Myers. Icarus Jackson, the new boy in school, is outcast because he has wings, but his resilient spirit inspires one girl to speak up for him. So you can understand the impact that literature has on a child's development, as literature can be a perfect holder for more serious conversations to morals and lessons learned. You know what? Esperanza, I never read this Esperanza Rising. I don't know why I couldn't read that. We're not gonna get into that. It looked a little funky in the lighting. Esperanza Rising, I never read this, but this always reminded me of the Islands of the Blue Dolphins. That's what it's called. Oh my gosh, and Freak the Mighty. They just tore these right out of the Scholastic Book Fair pamphlets. I just know it. Oh my gosh, different abilities and physical challenges bring two seemingly opposite to form a strong bond. It's like Pinky and the Brain. You got the brain guy who's short and he's a short king. I think we should celebrate short kings in our society. And the tall guy, I'm not assuming their intellectual ability based on their height. I'm just merely stating that stereotypes do exist. Oh, there's George. That's a really crisp lip smack. Sorry, I don't know if that hurts your ears. first book, and oh, look at that, Pearson. I barely know him. Anyways, that was the first book. And what was so special about that book is that I read that during my 255 education course. It was called Literature in a Diverse Society. And there was this professor named Gina, my homegirl Gina, Big G, Miss Tina. Anyways, she was so sweet, and she lived in Michigan. She taught this class virtually, and I took this class during the middle of winter. And so this class was an evening class as well. It was from 5 to 7 p.m. virtual, and I really enjoyed taking her class. She was just a sweet bundle of joy who had such insight into the complex diversity of books. She also gave us insight and helpful tools how to manage being teachers and choosing appropriate literary books. She was very sweet, so during this time I lived in a studio my second year of college because my freshman year was a little rough, so I low-key wanted to isolate for a second. But I had my studio, and I remember many a times during this virtual evening class at 5 p.m. the sun would be setting, it would be cloudy and rainy, and I would feel so cozy in my heated studio apartment. I would get my hot beverage and my dinner for that night, and I would sip and munch away as Miss Gina Tina Bonita would yap away. So I really enjoyed that class. That was one very special to me because of the format, the content, the professor, everything was very special to me. So now we have our next book. It's called Sociology in Action. You see, look at these calves. Look how complex and structured these calves are. I know, that's right. So I took sociology as my first class during my degree, and I was unsure about really what sociology was. You know, I had taken psychology and psychological sciences, so I was well versed in that, but sociology had me a little confuzzled about the contents and the kind of aspect and what it covered, what kind of sections. So I got scheduled into this course, and I'm really glad because some other poor people got stuck with religious studies. What's it formally called? It's something fancy sounding, but I knew atheists in that class who took a religious class, so I'm glad that I got to have sociology as my class. It was very relevant after taking it, and I gained my sociological eye, as it discussed in this book, to kind of notice various sociological aspects in various communities of my everyday life. So, and I had a professor, his name was Mr. Martinez. He was so chill, but he also knew how to market his major. So here are the various chapters. Basically what he told us is in freshmen slash like a little bit before, because this was a summer course the year before, or the summer before school started. And he told us that if we switched into sociology, we would have the opportunity to go to the men's colony, which was a local men's prison over by where my university was, and to do a case study on one of these 7 prisoners that he picked out and agreed. So there'd be 7 students and 7 prisoners, and you'd get to know the criminal justice system. I thought that was very fascinating and interesting. So he was a funny guy and shared his insights and perspectives. It was very, very cool. I enjoyed this class, learning about it. Looking through all the chapters. You go chapter 1, and they were very, again, text heavy. I feel like college is a very text heavy kind of situation. Chapter 3, look at that, I'm psychic. Is this, yeah, chapter 1. Observing and interacting, ethnography, quantitative, qualitative data, so you got some statistics, deductive and inductive research, meets therapy of childhood development. So as an elementary school major, this was very relevant to me, learning these kind of sections of development, statistics, perspectives of sociology, confronting economic equality. I know that's right. Anyways, yeah, so this class was very eye-opening. I learned a lot. And for one of our last classes, they basically gave us a scavenger map of our local downtown city and told us to find it. And these were various things, such as there was a local mission, and there was a statue of a young girl who was down the river from this pope, or not a pope, he was a friar who went on a missionary, and he was up the stream, and he was much taller than her, and he asked us to explain the symbolization, the overpowering of the kind of missionaries and missions on the West Coast when it was popular to kind of colonize and spread the word of Christianity. So that was a very interesting class that I enjoyed participating in. So this textbook covers most of it, includes key terms, review topics. I remember for this class we looked into Katy Perry's music video called Chained to the Rhythm, and it talks about societal norms, expectations, and the flow of communities to engage in various behaviors, some shallow, some expected, some superiorly moral. And so we kind of discussed the lyrics. It was a very insightful class, and I loved the discussions that we had. There was a 10-page paper though, so that was kind of overwhelming as an entry level, not even my freshman year it started, it was that summer before, so. But regardless, I learned a lot, and I remember we did another activity where we stood in a single file line, and so we were all shoulder to shoulder, and they would say statements such as, take a step forward if you're European descent, take a step forward if you're heterosexual, and this kind of distance So it was a discussion about privileges, and she apparently was not privileged compared to her classmates, and I was, like right in front of her, while others were more farther away, and we just kind of had a discussion about, we have different privileges, but we can make the most of what we have, and, try our best. But she, after that class, really took it to heart and made sure to keep her sociological eye open all the time. So that was very fascinating to watch her kind of look inwards. That was a very fun class. You have discussions that wouldn't otherwise be deemed not necessary or practical in the K through 12 elementary curriculum. We never had a sociology class in our high school, but if we did, I sure would take it because I just learned so much. Prejudice, stereotypes, and discrimination, repercussions of race, so many. And I know they had a critical race theory course. They also had a Beyonce course. Guess who's Joseph Adele? Beyonce. Anyways, sorry when they had to throw that in. That one's still running. I think that's really cool. I think it's Beyonce and her Lemonade album and deciphering the lyrics, and it was just fascinating. How like UCLA has like an Adele or a famous pop star course, while ours had a Beyonce course, and it was a part of the ethnic studies department, but sociology also works very closely with them because their topics intertwine. So very, very fascinating. College really opens your eye to how different things are structured from K to 12 in high school. So yeah, it was very interesting. I remember making Quizlets of all the definitions because there were just so many definitions to learn and to differentiate from one another based on how they sounded and all of that. So that was very fascinating. I really liked that class. So this next class I had, it was called Storytelling and the Applications of the Real World. And of course, storytelling plays a big part in elementary education and being a teacher. This is because whether or not you notice it when you were a student in elementary school or whether you're a teacher right now, in everyday life, storytelling plays a huge part in transforming and sharing information, engaging an audience, framing and structuring the content. There is so much that goes into a simple story about what happened yesterday, or something about nature, the environment, a funny story you're telling to a friend, some gossip you're telling your significant other or your coworkers if you're a nosy Nelly in the workplace. So this class, I had a guy named Ron as my professor, and he was let me tell you what. Number one, this man hated technology. Absolutely hated it. He was not fond of it, but funny enough, he had just told us that he purchased a Tesla. A Tesla out of all the different kinds of cars that you could have gotten. The most tech-savvy car known to man so far. So he was funny. We could not have laptops. We could not have our phones. No iPads for note taking. No cameras. No microphones for recording the lectures. Most of it was in rambling, I will say. We did have some funny stories, but he shared various stories about topics alongside storytelling and how to implement them into your story curriculum, situation, and audience. So, because of this, I really enjoyed this class, but let me say, I've never seen such a professional yapper. This man was treating this class like therapy at some points. He would say how he's depressed, and I'd be like, "Sir, tell us about the fish story." And so we learned about the rainbow fish. He was such a hoot, and he was sweet. But it was time for him to retire, which he did right after our class. Good for him. But he used to do a summer cohort of taking this class in Ireland. It's called Storytelling in Ireland for a summer, and you can take this course while studying abroad in Ireland over the summer, and it was such a fun opportunity. So me and my friend were going to attempt this. However, this man decided, I think today's the day, and he canceled that program before we even knew what it was, where it was going, the information. So, better like next time, I guess, but he was on his way out, you could tell. So, yes, this is a storytelling guide. We had to tell 2 stories. I told mine about a Russian witch, Baba Yaga, and the kind of Russian story of Hansel and Gretel, but it's Slavic, so of course it's going to be more violent and all that good stuff. But yeah, so there's so much in this textbook. We can go over the contents. Intro, how do I get started? How do I find the right stories? Once I find a story and like it, how do I make it my own? How do I shape stories from printed texts? How do I create stories from true life events? How do I create original stories? What makes a story strong? What makes a story weak? How do I memorize and rehearse a story? What performance techniques do I need to know? How do I make a program flow? Introductions and roles of the MC. What mistakes are frequently made by beginning storytellers? How do I control stage fright? That was a big one for our class. Let's continue. What are the ethics of storytelling? How do I market myself? Setting your fee. This one had to do with the discussion about how storytelling can be a career outside of the classroom. You can be a contract professional storyteller and set up appointments with various clients. So that way you're tapping into their memory and knowledge. I know our professor talked about how he worked with dementia patients, and storytelling unlocks certain parts of their brains to help slow down the dementia process. Finding and using an agent. No, not a real estate agent, a storytelling agent to book you gigs. How do I record and market audios? So you can do voice recordings as well for stories, such as e-stories or tapes or CDs. What is the life of a professional storyteller like? What was your worst performing experience? Probably in the class. Anyways, how can a teacher use storytelling in the classroom? Big home run right there. How can a media specialist improve and expand storytelling in the library? What should I know about censorship? What are the copyright laws laws concerning storytelling, storytelling resources, the Storytelling's Bookshelf, Storyteller's Bookshelf contributors. So this book has various notes, interviews, and discussions from various storytellers. So finding the right stories, and you can see on these pages, you have storytellers such as Laura Sims. You have Doug Littman. Story needs to be something you can make a connection with, and the audience can also make a connection with. Very well said, Doug. Diane Ferlatte. I like a good latte. Michael Parent. Do you think he's a single parent or a double parent or a poly parent? Margaret Red McDonald. I am not making up these names. Margaret Red McDonald's. Good for her. Good for her. That is queen behavior. Gail Ross. That's probably the most normal one out of all of these. Len Cabral. That's pretty cool. Robin Moore. Heather Forrest. Jay O'Callahan. Let's look up more names, shall we? Susan Klein. Carol Birch. David Novak. That reminds me of BJ Novak from The Office. Ryan. Bill Harley. Jackie Torrance. Gay Ducey. Sorry. Apparently I do have the humor of a middle schooler. That was a crazy name though, you have to admit. Ed Stivender. Margaret's reading McDonald's again. John Spellman. Like, is that her middle name? Maybe they manifested that they wanted a very literate and well-read child, so they put Red as her middle. Maybe she's a part of the McDonald's original founders' family lineage. There's Len again. Penina Scram. Sounds like you're telling a panini to scram. Anyways. Milbrae Birch. Steve Sandfield and Chucky Larkin. Robin Moore. So these are just a few of the books that I wanted to go over for today's video. That consisted of my college elementary education curriculum and the various topics, and you can understand how text-heavy these textbooks are. And what I want to do in the future is put a part 2 to this, because to my left I have more books. But I also have textbooks from when my mom attended college. And I think it would be pretty neat to compare more modern textbooks to more historical textbooks from the 80s and 90s. So I think that could be a good comparison to understand how different these things are. And if so, I'd like to review a syllabus more in the modern, present day, and that in the 90s, because I caught a glimpse of one of my moms when she was in college, and oh my goodness, there is no land acknowledgement, no office hours, no cheating policy acknowledgements, no analyzing the coursework and schedule. They just expected you to know the class, show up, and do the work. There was no over explaining. There was no complications. It was all set. So it's very interesting. We shall see in the future how I decide to go about that. But yes, this is the third of the textbooks that I wanted to dive in today to give you a glimpse of what my curriculum was like for my college education. Comment down below, what kind of textbooks did you have or stood out to you during your college curriculum or high school? Any crazy book bans that you might have come across? I know Catcher in the Rye was up for debate, but Sunny was just doing her job. Anyways, that is it for this evening's video. Alright, well, thank you so much for being here. I hope you're dozing off, or at least getting into the vibe of dozing off. I learned that the best trick for sleeping is you take 5 deep breaths while closing your eyes. Getting in a comfortable position. Let me give you a piece of advice. Do not fall asleep on your arms. You will wake up with pins and needles. I have done that too many times to count. So yes, get in a comfortable position. Make sure you use the restroom, done your skincare and everything. Have a cup of water because I don't know about you, but I do not like to walk all the way to the kitchen at 2 a.m. in the morning for some water because I can't sleep. Yeah, so get cozy, take 5 deep breaths, and count to 20, and soon you will be dozing off to slumberland. Alright, I hope you are there soon, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you. Have a good one.